Hey everyone, welcome back to the Lookout. Today is 7/11 Friday, and this one's gonna be pretty quick because just did an interview with Patty Grantham, who's she was on the Klamath National Forest as the forest supervisor for 11 years, and then she went and worked as the national director of fire and aviation during the pandemic for the Forest Service, and we had a good talk. But now I've got a whole bunch of work to do editing that video into something coherent for the Lookout. So got to kind of jam on it. So I'm just going to give you a quick update on what we got going on here today with the Green, Butler, and Summit fires in NorCal. This broadcast is brought to you by QTAC, makers of fine slip-in fire pumps and fire trucks, WaterX pumps, and Firebox. I was just in a prescribed fire burn plan writing class, and we were talking about how great these things are. Skid steer attachments, basically like a fire truck that you put on your Bobcat. Great stuff. Okay, so I was in class and I was having a hard time not looking at the webcams on my phone. I checked a peek kind of in the middle of the day, and I was like, oh no, it looks like there's a pyrocumulus popping up on the Green fire, and there were some big smoke clouds on Green today. But the good news is that pretty much the spread on Green is away from the kind of critical, highest concern areas. So kind of based on mapping that was done midday and on the webcams, here's what I think's happening. If we look at the Green fire, we've got up to the north, we've got the Shoe fire. If we zoom out here, someone had asked for a kind of bigger picture. So here's Redding, here's Bernie, in between's Highway 299. All these yellow dots are homes, and as you notice, there's not many yellow dots out here in this area between I-5 and 299, which is actually, this is a pretty large area. It's kind of hard to tell on a map, but you know, it'll take you several hours to drive across the dirt roads here from around Lakehead, through the McLeod Arm, through the Siouxland Harris Creek Arm, and the Pitt River Arm of Lake Shasta before you pop out over here around Montgomery Creek. So the big concerns we've got on this fire are if this fire was able to jump the Pitt River and run up here into Round Mountain, Montgomery Creek. The area that we referred to as the Fountain Fire Scar that burned a long time ago now, but still has a lot of even age fuels. So this is when we talk about the Fountain Fire, 1992 Fountain Fire. Critical fire hazard in a lot of these areas because the trees are all the same age. So that's our concern, is that this fire crosses the Pitt River. So today when the fire was blowing up, we've got kind of northerly influence on the wind right now, and so we've been watching the fire generally backing down to the south. This white line is last night's perimeter at 9:30 p.m. and this red perimeter is today's perimeter at about noon. And so the big kind of mushroom clouds you're seeing today were the fire had been backing down into the bottom of this bowl, Susanville Canyon, I think, which is on the north side of Brock Mountain. And Brock Mountain, we've been looking at this and wondering if it might be a potential control feature as the fire moved down in there, and we talked about how it was going to be tough to hold anything there because the fire was going to come boiling out of this inaccessible, steep, heavily vegetated bowl. So that's what happened today. The fire kind of boiled out of the north side of Brock Mountain. It's slopped over Brock Mountain, and that's where you're seeing those mushroom clouds. So the good news there is that no one lives out on this 10,000 acres here. Forest Service has been burning out here. Fire's not going to do a ton of major lasting damage to the oak woodlands out here. It will kill a bunch of Doug fir, but in general, Doug fir are not an endangered species, and oak's really important habitat for deer and turkeys and other wildlife, and this is serious wildland. So as long as they can keep the fire on this peninsula and not have it jump over the lake, that's a good deal. So On the other side here, overnight, the fire is kind of back down to this road, and I'm not sure what this road is, but this is the road that goes south from Chirp Chatter Campground that's up here. And the strategy, they have been prepping this road, but they're also putting a dozer line up this ridge to protect structures that are in this creek over here. There's some cabins over here, I guess. And this area is called Diddless Creek, so in Fowler Gulch. So they've been working on this, and as of when they mapped it at noon, the fire was backing down to this road. May or may not have crossed that road this afternoon, don't really know. But you can see kind of the steadily downhill growth here between the white line and the red line. There was kind of more major growth up here on this northwest corner of the fire. This northwest corner of the fire is going to run into the shoe fire, which is shown here in blue, that burned last year. And the kind of time critical thing that we've been watching here is that they're preparing fire line on this ridge between Ripgut Creek and Fender's Ferry Road, and we've been curious if they would have time to get that done. So far, so good. Overnight, the fire hadn't kind of made it over the ridge into Ripgut Creek. With the growth that's happening this afternoon, it may be getting into there. It's tight timing on whether or not they'll have the ability to properly fire this ridge before the fire gets there, but the fact that it's given them as much time as it has is good news. One site I use a lot is called windy.com, and so you can click on the map out here, and then it'll give you a forecast for winds. And the good thing in this wind forecast for the next 4 days is it's not showing any major northwest winds. The northwest winds would be concerning for blowing the fire across the Pitt River. The winds generally are coming out of the northeast, and kind of prevailing afternoon winds coming out of the southwest. So no strong winds in the forecast for pretty much the next week, and no big northwest winds forecast in that time either. So that's really good news. It makes it more likely that they might be able to finish this line and get it fired before the fire pushes it. It's hard to tell, and as we've said before, it's going to be hard for them to fire this line and get the depth they need. It's going to take some doing. However, if they do continue to have northwest winds and they fire this and they lose it with small spots and stuff, having the northwest wind on this is going to be good, because it'll make it easier for them potentially to get aircraft and helicopter drops on slopovers on this ridge. So far so good. I'm glad I'm not standing out here on this ridge watching a mushroom cloud across the canyon below me. They're doing good work, and this has been a kind of intense effort for them to get this ridge prepped. But it sounds like yesterday they had CAL FIRE dozers up there, and this line is getting put in. So that's what we got for green. We're going to jump to Butler. Someone's wondering about the smoke. Here's today's current satellite. You can see kind of the blow up. The little kind of dot of white is the mushroom cloud that popped up on Butler, and you can see that, or on Butler on green, you can see the smoke generally kind of hanging over this whole area. So I wouldn't be surprised if some of that smoke's getting over to Carson City and Reno. It's smoky in the valley. This high pressure just kind of keeps that fire smoke from really clearing out very well. See, Butler's also smoking a lot. Butler's kind of smoking itself out. Not literally, but figuratively. So let's go to Butler. So we're flying up to northwestern California. It's the Butler Fire. And Butler is between Eureka and Wairika. Almost like halfway. Which is to say, it's in the middle of frickin' nowhere. Way the heck out there. Kind of about as far as you can get from civilization, so to speak, and still be in California. Looking at the white line from last night at 9:30 versus the red of this afternoon. See, Butler's also been vigorously on the move, kind of backing vigorously down slope. making some kind of slope-driven runs up this slope, backing down here, making some slope-driven runs. Oftentimes what happens here is what we call rollout. So the fire is where the white line is, and burning pine cones or chunks of logs or other stuff roll down the hill and then run back up on itself. Butler's backing actively towards structures at the bottom. Not a lot of people live out there, and as we said, some people in Butler here did some burning around their place. So this fire is going to continue to burn for a long time, out to these recent burn scars in blue. And the last one I'm going to look at here is the Summit Fire. The green here is the 2014 Frying Pan Fire. This fire hasn't spread much since it was mapped last night. Hasn't spread at all on the north side. It's still a little bit uncontained on some of the southwest flanks. But as we've said before, this fire is, if you look at where the fire that's in green stopped in 2014, it ran into these rocks and was kind of done. Overnight, there were some spot fires that happened here up by Summit Lake, and those haven't grown between last night and midday when they got imaged again. So that's the Summit Fire. Over here, this blue is the Shelley Fire, so that buffers. If a fire gets established in here, there's some buffer from last year's fire. And then this other area hasn't burned since the Waldo Fire in 2017. But regardless, this area, having had a fire 8 years ago, it's less likely that a fire that gets established up in the head here is going to come romping out of this 8-year-old burn. We see that fires really lay down and behave in recent burns where the fuels are reduced. Someone says there's an earthquake swarm going on in Eureka too. Sure seems like them end times. Alright, so that's your report. I'm going to work on Patty. And thanks for your support. If you want the in-depth coverage, jump over and check out the lookout.org. 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 And where's that at? We got all kinds of stuff on there, including today's update on green, which has got a few more maps than I just showed, but they tell the same story. Thanks, everyone. Catch y'all later.